I'm Arturo Gaitán Covarrubias from Mexico. First of all, Hi everyone, I'm Arturo Gaitán Covarrubias from Mexico. Hi everyone, I'm Arturo Gaitán Covarrubias from Mexico. First of all, I would like to thank to the steering committee and the organizing committee for this kind invitation, especially to Hi everyone, I'm Arturo Gaitán Covarrubias from Mexico. First of all, I would like to thank to the steering committee and the organizing committee for this kind invitation. Hi everyone, I'm Arturo Gaitán Covarrubias from Mexico. First of all, I would like to thank to the steering committee and the organizing committee for this kind invitation, especially to Dr. Surendra Manjakar. I'm very honored to be here with you in the India Construction Week 2020 Digital, reviving construction industry in post-COVID world. So I will talk today about the transformation of the concrete industry in the face of challenge of COVID-19. So I will share my presentation. And I would like to start this presentation with you with a quote of Charles Darwin. At this phase, make everything we are going through have a special relevance. And this is where I congratulate the organization to bring these issues to this table. So this quote says, "It's not the strongest species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one that best responds to the challenge." We start a very complicated year, 2020, where Australia was on fire, thousands and thousands of land areas on fire. Then the virus of the COVID begins to spread in a fact without precedent in a modern era for that all of us who are alive not have to live. And the question is, what has changed? These photographs are the best visual example of the great effort we are making around the world. This virus has come to leave theaters without actors, stadiums without players, or simply cities without people, a stadium without lights. Well, in our Mexico, we have an empty Zócalo or downtown, a place that was always crowded with people, even by foreigners. First, the Fine Arts Palace, or leaving behind the crossroads, like the principal roads in downtown Mexico without the crowds. And what about the Easter or the holidays? When we all used to get ready to crowd the beaches of Acapulco, today there are just beaches without people. And what about Cancun? Today, one of the most visited beaches by tourists in Mexico from all over the world is desolate. And our way of life has also changed, not only the places where we used to go for recreation or work, but our day-to-day now will be different. Things are basic as going to be as the supermarket without someone to accompany us, and now go only with purchasing measures that must be met. Or even, we do not even stop at the supermarket. There are already options to deliver to the market in our homes. The habits that tasted that we were used to go out at any time to look for a taco to satisfy our hunger or craving, or even when we were in the street for work or transportation to stop and have our meals anywhere. Now it will not be so easy. So our day-to-day work in the office, surrounded by colleagues and work scenarios that facilitated collaboration, integration, including innovation and problem solving in a very fast way. being all in the same space and in the same place, or even schools and the way of learning. Now, we adapt our approach of communication and tasks following up to the realization of activities trying to maintain collaboration and ensure that everything keeps working. All industries are also impacted and are modifying their processes and ways of operating. The construction industry is not the exception. The industry with many craft practices, which integrates a large amount of labor and also integrates a wide spectrum of our society. Construction, as we know, it even now is composed of people. So, with all the background we have seen so far, our construction industry will be impacted by a series of new rules and must be transformed to a new construction, a new way of building, a new way of using resources, time to solve the day-to-day. But also the new construction will be directed by to how we plan, how we design, how we must consider from the stages of design and conception of the projects. So what are the effects of the COVID on construction and associated risks? Well, the COVID hits in Mexico has statistics. The construction industry is responsible for the 7.7% of the national GDP. Only 38% of the works corresponds of the public sector, and the 62% is about the private sector. Last year, the construction industry in Mexico generated about 6.1 million formal and informal jobs, of which 70 to 80% came from small and medium enterprises. At risk are 500,000 jobs in construction by COVID-19. The Mexican ready-mix concrete industry stopped operations. That is an action that never seen in the history before in Mexico. So as we have seen, the construction industry has a great role within the economies of all countries. And the challenge now of the construction is not only to continue contributing what it contributes today. Sorry. As an essential industry, the construction must lead the change, the transformation, and must be an example to follow in all aspects. So the level of commitment that the industry has is extremely something with the society and with the country. The challenges that construction faces in this transformation will be largely addressed in how we manage the workforce to make a revival of our works quickly and safely, as well as in compliance with the rules of health and ensure that all actors in our projects, from workers, suppliers, supervisors, architects, engineers, etc., return home healthy without risk of infection. And since we do this, surely many of you have already implemented these controls, ranging from the installation of sanitary fences to identify possible risk of carriers of the virus, to meet the required staff capacity of the personal capacity that allow us to ensure a distance of 2 meters between them, the famous distance, and also strengthens the measure of cleaning and disinfection of areas, equipment, and materials. We know that one of the great challenges of our work is that by reducing the number of workers sharing the same space to be able to give the same productivity or more than we had. In other words, to do the same with less. Fundamental principle of efficiency, to increase productivity or to achieve the same advance of work with less resources, both in time and in labor. What were the demands and requirements that we used to need from the concrete? Workability, that translates into tempering, unloading, placement, and vibration. Request for typical strain resistance to 200 or 20, 25 or 30 megapascals in an age of warranty of 28 days for it to reach the resistance required. And of course, all this thinking about the economy traditionally in a conventional concrete that in many occasions represent an increase of constructive processes. And already very punctual concretes were specified by durability thinking in generating a greater useful life to the concrete. Generally, the works always take longer than programmed. The projects are different. And in the course of the time, there are always misshapes that not visualized from their specification, resulting in an expense greater than budgeted. If we were to think about this transformation and see the opportunities that concrete offers us, not necessarily because it is gray, dense, and square concrete, it also has the opportunity to be flexible in the face of the requirements of reduced personnel, in reducing construction times that can translate into shortening the weeks of delay, reducing or eliminating also the finishing processes accompanied by innovation and processes and materials. As I mentioned before, the challenges are many, and these must be summarized in three words: security, always taking care of our personnel; efficiency, reaching our objectives in spite of the challenges and in a good support and accompaniment. And for this, I want to reflect in a question. Now that our construction industry has been considered as essential, what kind of products do you imagine that could help to face the challenge of the of products? Well, we will talk about today about self-compacting concrete, architectural concrete, ready-mix mortar, and antibacterial concrete. Well, these four concretes will help us to reviving our industry after the COVID-19. And with all these opportunities we have mentioned, several options are open to lead us to the strain the position of the works before the challenges mentioned above as the concrete and as a construction material with diverse performances can lead us to execute in an intelligent and concise way to fulfillment of the requirements of guidelines. The first agent promoted transformation in our construction is self-compacting or self-consolidating concrete, which is a highly fluid concrete which allows partial or total replacement vibration and contributes to make more efficient work in the casting, achieving highly aesthetics finishing. All of this will help us so that it can be placed very easily, which leads us to reduce the personnel dedicated to the compaction or consolidation, which in turn handles equipment to carry out this activity, which in turn also generates noise and emissions, also reduce the personnel required to spread the concrete, for example, in slabs and other horizontal elements, and with them also a reduction in the time of placements and leave ready any element, slabs, columns, foundation, etc., etc. It also helps us with the leveling work, avoiding any segregation. We know that the workability of concrete is indicated by its resilience, and depending on the resilience's value of the concrete, it will be easier or impossible to place it. The placement is done by means of vibration or compactation and personnel who perform this activity. As we mentioned before, due to its high fluidity, the self-compacting concrete does not have a receding flow, which allows us to carry out a vibration to assure its correct placement and consolidation. Therefore, self-compacting concrete helps us to reduce cost and repairs to walls, cavities, thanks to its high fluidity and excellent ability to pass through the reinforcing steel. It also reduces times in the construction process and partially or totally replace vibrating, reducing labor and even avoiding the rental of vibrating equipment. All this also translated into a considerable decrease in rework due to bad finishing. How many of you have not assigned a complete crew to punching jobs, repairing recently cast elements? It reduced the casting times, so the time of the workers to be on site is reduced. All factors that the self-company concrete can contribute are translated in a reduction for up to 40% in manual labor. That is to say, a conventional crew that is formed by 7 workers can be reduced to 4 to deliver the same result at the same element, without qualifying the benefits and savings in environmental impacts. Our second productivity and transformation promoter is the accelerated resistance concrete, which is a concrete in a normal setting concrete that allows to obtain fast resistance besides reducing the time of execution and, above all, to put in service the work in a few hours. It is suitable for construction system that demands fast finishing and soon the construction. These performance qualifiers will allow us to reduce construction times and increase the productivity of the project, as well to adhere to the work programs which, as mentioned by the architect previously, we tend to lag behind the times established for the program. The accelerated resisting concretes allow us to obtain the specified resistance at 28 days in up to 25 hours or less, which allow us to put the elements and structures into service in less time, which translate into greater productivity. In addition to obtain the resistances in less time, these concretes have the quality of customized setting. That is to say, they can have normal setting times, and also the time in which they set to and obtain their specified resistance can be accelerated. Therefore, these concretes allow us to remove the forms or the formwork in less time, and perhaps in the same day, an element can be cast and deconstructed the same day. With all the above mentioned, it allows us to put the elements and structures into service, always ensuring compliance with quality and resistance standards, generating savings for up to 70% in construction time. What benefits does architectural concrete offer us? The main objective of an architectural concrete is the reduction in the processes for finishing, since it is a product that, in addition to complying with the structural properties, has the capacity to have the highest aesthetic quality. That this is achieved with a correct mix design by means of the integral colors, aggregates, and cement, leaving as a fundamental character the image, the form, and the texture in a single material, the concrete. Architectural concrete is competitive with other traditional materials. We can get more durability, a saving in maintaining cost, and most importantly, a reduction in finishing time for up to 25%. In the case of using the architectural concrete, it is important to mention that we must take certain care before making a cast, and some recommendations are a proper selection of formwork, mold release, have very clear what type of texture and finishing we want to leave capture. Make a mock-up before the official supply in order to assess the appearance of this and also familiarize with the construction process. Architectural concretes can reach a compressive strength of 700 or 70 megapascals. This is a quite friendly concrete because we can use it anywhere we can imagine, from structural elements to pavements. The architectural concrete replaces the paint, eliminates the painting and repairing processes, reducing construction time and finishing stages is one of the longest construction processes due to the detail in the works. The times and works of aesthetic repairs are smaller, being a product with uniformity in appearance, savings in maintaining cost. Now, let's review a value analysis comparing the initial investment of architectural concrete against a concrete conventional, plus paint. When we buy something, we only think about the initial cost without integrating the additional cost. that we can have in our projects, and it is that nowadays concrete is able to adjust to any need without requirements in additional constructive process, as it is the case of the architectural concrete. As a result, we get the lower initial investment and the saving that could be generated by using color integrated into a concrete wall. In addition, we add the benefit after maintaining speed of construction, among others. Stabilized mortar, or it is a ready-mix mortar that maintains workability properties in periods of 4, 5, and 8 hours. The traditional comparison of this mortar is against the mortar made on site. Imagine that your project has through where the mixer truck arrives and discharge the mortar in a couple of master builders just have to carry the mortar and start placing it. This makes it very clear that you are reducing the number of the site personnel and the storage space for the material on site. It is recommended for masonry works and can be supplied in different resistance and slumps. We can make any elements we can imagine with this product. So the ready-mix mortar or the stabilized mortar, it competes against the mortar made on site. The mortar decreases labor density per element because the product is pre-mixed from the ground up, ready for placement, and there is no need to add anything on site. Reduce on-site storage cost of material because it is pre-mixed, and reduce rework for repairs caused by the quality of performance problems when the mortar is made on site. Well, the last concrete is the self-curing concrete. The self-curing concrete is a concrete whose main function is to promote internal curing, making the hydration of the cement more efficient, promoting cohesion, improving workability, and facilitating the finishing of the concrete. Generally, we have the normal concrete process, a conventional concrete, and a concrete curing process. Self-curing concrete promotes that internally curing by itself. Antibacterial concrete is a concrete with antimicrobial characteristics, which in addition to developing its mechanical properties, can slow and inhibiting the growth of bacteria on the surface and inside the concrete elements. So generally, we have the formal concrete process, a conventional concrete, and a concrete curative process. Self-curing concrete promotes that internal curing by itself. Antibacterial concrete fosters health and sustainability, reduce the need for protective coverings and disinfection processes during construction or after the work, which reduce time in the construction program. Reduces the disinfection process for more than 10 years for a wide range of bacteria. And all these reduce the application of disinfection for more than 10 years, as we said. And as we have said before, the situation in which construction finds itself in terms of its evolution over time, one of the greatest opportunities is to innovate. Innovation and its incorporation into our projects will also ensure that we can meet and overcome the challenges we all face today. It is necessary to enter the digital world, and this will allow us to be more efficient and increase our productivity. Make use of tools that allow us to be connected with our customers, with our suppliers, with our own equipment. Tools that facilitate us the management of information and that help us to make better decisions. Make other orders online with a click, for example. Construction has the advantage of being able to learn from many other industries that have gone through similar digital transformation processes in the last 5 years. Experience in other industries indicates that the companies that are fastest to assimilate emerging technologies and develop new platforms are the first to move, have gained a strong competitive advantage. We expect the construction sector to follow a similar pattern and to present all industry participants with the imperative of launching an immediately transformation. The technological stagnation of construction has led us to have low productivity, not to incorporate digital technology in our projects. However, it is time to start using tools that lead us to innovate in construction, not only in the area of materials, but also in the management of the project sites. For example, if the airports have implemented artificial intelligence technologies to detect suspicious cases or positive COVIDs, why not have the same technologies in the health fences in our project sites? Using big data to monitor the efficiency of our workers and detect possible infections, or having sensors or telemetry to be monitoring the proper implementation of prevention protocols. And also begin to visualize construction processes that hand in hand with the materials take us to another level construction. Workers, robots to automate the placement of steel and its assembly, the placement of blocks of partitions, concrete launched with shotcrete with drones, modular prefabricated precast structures, not only assemble the buildings, as the cases of the hospital construction we have seen during this pandemic, 3D printing of concrete houses, buildings, use of the BIM, 7D, concrete houses, buildings, technologies that incorporate from the design the prevention measures for the execution of the works. What we can achieve if we specify or change the way we see concrete. Think of concrete as an opportunity, as a summary. It can clearly help us in reduction of the work personnel. And to mention an example, it can be applied to the fluidity or stabilization characteristic of a product. We can think about accelerating the resistance even in hours and not wait for a period of 28 days. The reality is that almost 80 days of confinement have shown us that the future and innovation is now. So I'm going to close in my presentation with a quote. Every crisis has a solution, an expiration date, and a learning. So thank you so much, and I'm ready if you have any question. Thank you so much for your attention.
Up above the world so high and down on the grounds, the advancements that you see in India's aviation is the success saga of the excellence shown by Airports Authority of India. AAI is constructing, operating and maintaining world-class airport. Along with that, AAI has a side that's down to earth and close to the people. One that's clearly visible in its CSR programs and activities. Through its CSR activities, AAI has keenly focused on skill development. To generate livelihood opportunities in backward and remote areas, AAI has tied up with Construction Industry Development Council for skill development of unemployed youth and people belonging to economically weaker sections.
In construction industry, there is a huge shortage of skilled manpower. At the same time, there is a unemployed youth. So if we provide them a skill, it will be a win-win situation for both.
Through this skill development training, the student get theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge in construction-related subjects like land survey, electrical wireman, general work supervisor, site accountant and storekeeper, etc.
Actually, here we are providing trainings to the unskilled youth of India who are unemployed. We distribute pamphlets at the different locations of UP, Bihar, West Bengal to get the unskilled manpower. Then we can make them skilled. So we are providing them 3 months training.
More than 5,000 students have been trained with this skill development training program since 2015.
जब मैं यहाँ पे आया था तो इस सब्जेक्ट से रिलेटेड मेरे पास कुछ ज़्यादा नॉलेज नहीं थी, लेकिन यहाँ आने के बाद इस फील्ड में मुझे काफ़ी नॉलेज मिली है।
हमारे 2 महीने हो गए ट्रेनिंग के और 1 महीना बाकी रहा, मतलब काफ़ी कुछ सीख लिया 2 महीने के अंदर।
यहाँ से मतलब सीख के जाएंगे तो हम दुकान खोल सकते हैं अपने घर पे जाके, मतलब हम अपना कोई भी बिजनेस फैला सकते हैं।
ये बहुत अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रहा है एयरपोर्ट और CIDC, जिससे कि बच्चे अपना आगे का फ्यूचर बना सकें।
With this skill development training, AAI has generated employment for many of underprivileged and uneducated youth. And on the other side, AAI and other PSUs got a skilled worker for their construction sites.
ट्रेनिंग से हमको मतलब बहुत लाभ हुआ है। मैं आज यहाँ पे जॉब पे हूँ और मेरा काम यहाँ पे जो है प्लांट को चलाने का है। मतलब जो बाहर से ऑर्डर आता है कंक्रीट का, मैं डिस्पैच स्लिप से उसे यहाँ से बना के मतलब माल को बनवा के और वहाँ पे साइट पे भेजना होता है हमको।
पहले मुझे कंप्यूटर की बिल्कुल भी नॉलेज नहीं थी, फिर धीरे धीरे मैं 3 महीने में इतना सीख गई कि
Wherever you are, my name is Pedro Castro Borges. It's a pleasure for me to participate in this online international conference on reviving construction industry in post-COVID world and India Construction Week, of course. I'm going to talk with you about the social appropriation and application of corrosion and concrete knowledge in the face of pandemics and natural disasters. Now, we are living a very singular situation around the world, which is the pandemics. However, there are many things that are linked with the situation of the poor people. We need to fight against that. We have been doing that for many years, but we have not complete success. The idea of this presentation is to show you some of the things that we have been doing here in our place in Yucatan to make people to have the social appropriation of knowledge. As a global approach, there is a perception of the national and international community about the effect of teaching in the field of engineering. However, it is not only teaching. In engineering and in many fields, we have to have together the teaching and learning processes, and for that, we have modern methods for measuring knowledge appropriation. Starting with teaching, we have a curriculum structure. We have flexibility to guide students to special. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Pedro Castro Borges. It's a pleasure for me to participate in this online international conference on reviving construction industry in post-COVID world and India Construction Week, of course. I'm going to talk with you about the social appropriation and application of corrosion and concrete knowledge in the face of pandemics and natural disasters. Now, we are living a very singular situation around the world, which is the pandemics. However, there are many things that are linked with the situation of the poor people. We need to fight against that. We have been doing that for many years, but we have not complete success. The idea of this presentation is to show you some of the things that we have been doing here in our place in Yucatan to make people to have the social appropriation of knowledge. As a global approach, there is a perception of the national and international community about the effect of teaching in the field of engineering. However, it is not only teaching. In engineering and in many fields, we have to have together the teaching and learning processes, and for that, we have modern methods for measuring knowledge appropriation. Starting with teaching, we have a curriculum structure. We have flexibility to guide students to specialize. This is with optional subjects. We have trained teachers who provide different teaching methods like group dynamics, or interactions with real problems. However, there are some inconveniences during the teaching process, and this is important to note. There is a lack of criteria for assimilating available information. There are lots of information available, but little knowledge poured into it and a lot of confusion. This is the case of the internet. Unfortunately, you know that many of the things that are in internet contribute not to deformation, but only to information. There is also a very strong inconvenience that is the scarce basic information in teachers and students to forge a criterion during information analysis. And this exists especially when students and even teachers have had no contact with formal research. And formal research doesn't mean specifically the university, but also at prior levels, also during high school or previous levels too. For the process of learning, since my point of view, we have to follow three stages that are very important. First, basic appropriation of knowledge. We need to have an analysis of information and knowledge of databases, different and similar opinions of literature, creating one's own criterion with the appropriation of knowledge. After basic appropriation, the formal appropriation consists on generating knowledge. This can be through scientific research and as a part of student training since the bachelor's degree. But once we have the basic and the formal appropriation of knowledge, our problem in our developing countries could be the social appropriation of knowledge, because the knowledge doesn't reach, for example, users in the correct way. For this, we have mechanisms. These mechanisms are generated or could be generated for the area community to appropriate the knowledge generated. I'm going to show you in this slide what I try to mean. This community from San Crisanto participated in a research, participative research, that included to take into account communities where we have farmers, fishermen, and people that don't know how to read, how to write, but they are intelligent people. And they are very interested in having some infrastructure and some economic activities to survive against disasters. Natural disasters as hurricanes, storms, health disasters, for example, as this pandemic. In this photo, we are observing people from this community without basic knowledge. They are practicing a corrosion problem. This is very important because they are obtaining the knowledge from a practice. A group of professionals tried to prepare together with them methodologies to appropriate from the knowledge. This is another photo with a part of the dynamics to get the knowledge with a good access for them. This community, after having all of these experiences, they were able to construct their own houses. This is a photo where members from different families were participating, making the roof, part of the roof of their house. So in this way, and with this knowledge, with this participative research, they were able to know what a cover of concrete means, what a reinforcement corrosion means, what the right dosage of a mixture is. And that was very important to know it, for them to know it empirically at least. Finally, most of them didn't know how to express their ideas, but the group of professionals promote them to use draws. And this is a typical draw of the type of house they needed to live. This is to avoid all the problems related with the storms, the floods, the hurricanes, and now these health disasters. So here we have the palafy or the steel house that finally we perform. Once I appropriate basic knowledge, I do for my research. I publish my results on high impact journals. They quote me by other researchers, and then what? Well, I'm going to tell you a success story. And this is a steel house with durability and sustainability criteria. Sustainability and durability criteria were obtained by the people through the participative research. This is the community of San Crisanto in the north of Yucatan. The population is located on the coast of the country, 10,000 kilometers of coast, face the effects of hurricanes and tropical storms at risk in their physical and economical integrity. Here are the effects of Hurricane Gilbert. This is a satellite image and the disasters in Port of Celestún and Port of Progreso. And this is the case of Hurricane Isidoro in 2002. This is a satellite image of the Port of San Felipe and the Port of Progreso too. The Pala Fire, the steel house, the first model, the first prototype was constructed just before the passage of Isidoro. And these are some examples of the floods in Mexico, recent floods in Yucatan and Tabasco. If by that time the government had a strategy to construct steel houses everywhere to minimize the impact, economical, physical, and human impact of the floods, we could have less problems than now. That at this moment, where all the southeast of Mexico is affected by floods. Here are other recent images of the disasters, recent disasters. And here we have the estimated data of the COVID-19 in Mexico. Now, by November 25, 2020. Fortunately, we have the vaccines coming, but the problem here in the Southeast is terrible now. But what was the origin of the Palafites or the steel project? In 2002, it emerged as an idea of the part of Simvestab in Mérida in conjunction with the population. The idea was to use a rural housing model, but to prepare and to have the idea of this housing model with the people. And of course, with durability criteria, sustainability criteria, and try to adapt it to a steel housing. These are some photographs from steel houses in many parts of the world. A palafite is defined as a commonly built dwelling within a lake, river, or swamp on stakes or dry feet. This is the first palafite after the passage of Hurricane Isidoro in the village of San Crisanto. With this in mind, the objective, part of the objectives of this talk was to show you the experience of training people from developing communities to appropriate knowledge related with corrosion and concrete, even in the presence of poverty and illiteracy. So, after doing this, as I showed you in the previous slides, what was the second objective, which was very important, was to detect and record the influence of microclimates on the corrosion process of the palafite substructure based on orientation, height, positioning of the rebar, internal temperature, and humidity of concrete. I'm going to show you some of the results that were obtained with the help of the community. So they were able to empirically know when their house was in danger or not in terms of corrosion or durability. Here are the palafites, the first models, the first one with galvanized steel inside concrete, the second one with black steel. The models are quite different. And the palafite 3 with conventional steel and concrete, and the fourth one, from the fourth one, we have the prefabricated option. The prefabricated option let us decrease the cost. Of course, the participation of the people mainly was on the roof and some other parts of the structure within the construction. The palafite's design was based on the characteristics of rural housing in the state, as you can see in this specific one. and it covers the main needs of the inhabitants of the community. In the methodology, a basic description of this design was the reinforced concrete substructure, which was the base for our study to have the durability of these ones, because the substructure was sustaining the structure, and it was confronted with the tides, high tides, with the impacts, with the floods, and of course now with the situation of the pandemic. So the families could stay at their home, safe, without risks, with their properties, with their human lives, and of course from the pandemics. The elements that make up it were prefabricated, and the design included moisture chambers. These moisture chambers were performed to obtain temperature and relative humidity data, as well as electrochemical data. In the characterizations, we try to measure every 2.5 or 3 months, and we use electrochemical and environmental measurements to perform. In the characterization, we use several studies areas in the columns and the beams. In these columns and the beams, we selected 3 positions, and we obtain results from them and also from the rows. We have several nomenclature. We are going to talk in this conference about some specific contributions of this study. These were the measurements, the apparatus to make the measurements of temperature and relative humidity. And this is the commercial corrosimeter, the GCOR6, that was used to measure with the chambers and with the help of the community to have values of about resistivity, corrosion rate, potential, corrosion potential, and so on. Now we have the results. I'm going to show you the result carefully. This is the only slide of results, and then we are going to go to the discussion. I'm going to show you only the corrosion rate values. These corrosion rate values are in accordance with the others: humidity, temperature, corrosion potential, resistivity, and so on. There are 3 important things here on the corrosion rate that I like to show you. The first one is to note that there is a mixture of all the variables. So it is impossible to know the contribution of each of them if we are talking about the orientation, because the orientation is giving us the possibility to change some design variables on the palafite and to make it more accessible, more economic, and more durable to the community. So that was very important to us. And the second thing to observe here is that all the tendencies are flat. And that was very important, because the third thing was to note the dotted lines, specifically the red dotted line. That means the threshold between the passivated and the depassivated zones. And in this case, all of the values were below the depassivation zone. So we were not in risk of having corrosion, and the behavior of all the structure was as we were expecting. So that made us feel very happy, very, very happy until now. So the durability design was working. So what is the problem now? To have the contributions. So it is not possible with this representation, so we had to change. So now we are going to discuss the results in terms of the cumulative corrosion rate. The cumulative corrosion rate is going to show you the influence of orientation, which is the main parameter we are going to analyze today. The corrosion rates in microamperes per square centimeter per month. Let's observe here. We are going to analyze the heights in columns. The top, the average, and the lower height. The top height at 110 centimeters from the baseline. The average height at 80 centimeters from the baseline. And the lower height at 40 centimeters from the baseline. we can observe a consistency. All the tendencies are similar and beautiful. All the tendencies of the cumulative corrosion rate show us that the north upper height is always below the south upper height. The same happens at the top, at the average, and at the lower heights. And that is very, very, very interesting. We have on the south the marsh, and the marsh is producing a constant humidity, and for this reason, the time of wetness is higher than on the north side where we have the sea. Where we have the sea, we have tides, we have north winds, but we have very specific cycles of wetting and drying, and that is the reason why the time of wetness is less than on the south face. And we are being able to observe that very clear on the columns of a house and with the help of the community. And the community knows what this means, and they are learning how to protect their palaphites. If now we see the influence of the orientation in beans, we can see a similar trend. The difference here is that the south zone is below. We have no an explanation for this, a very clear explanation for this, but we suspect that this is because most of them, or all of the beans, are protected, are covered from the environment. So apparently, the influence of the environment is almost the same at any location. And that's the reason why we are observing very small cumulative corrosion rates, and it's not easy to find differences between the north, the central, and the south zone. If now we show the north zone, let's think about only about the north where we have the sea, where we have less time of wetness than in the south, where we have tides and where we have north winds. In this case, we have a very clear influence of the orientation. As you can observe here, we can see again the upper is, we have here the average, the height. But as we are in the north, we have a chance to compare east versus west. So let's observe what happens in the column at the upper part, again, at 108 and 10 centimeters, at the middle at 80 centimeters, and at the lower east part at 40 centimeters, all of them above the baseline. And as we can observe here, always the east part, look at this, the east part, the east part, and the east part is practically below the west part. The reason for this is that the time of wetness is playing a role here. It's not so different, but it is clear that the east part is having less influence of the time of wetness. That was very amazing for us, because we can now know how to protect the north, the south, the east, the west, also how to play with the dosage of the mixture, with the position, with the concrete cover, with the kind of cover, with the kind of concrete, and then try to minimize the cost with the same durability of the project. If now we see the south zone, remember the south zone is the zone which is in front of the marsh and with more time of wetness. We can observe also the same difference. Look at that. The east part is always below, always below. It's not completely clear, but we are feeling that. So the treatment could be the one that in the north. The only difference is that in the south, we are having more time of wetness and then more cumulative corrosion rate, but the tendencies are the same among them. As conclusions, In terms of microclimates, they were recorded and they modified electrochemical activity based on the orientation, height, and position of the rebar. In terms of orientation, the southern part of the palafite or the steel house is more electrochemically active than the northern zone. And the bars located in the west part of the columns are more electrochemically active than the east side bars. Another conclusions, the elements of the steel house with the greatest electrochemical activity have been the columns, also above the beams. The lower height of the columns is more active as expected than the upper and medium heights because of the accumulation of humidity. It was also verified that in addition to microclimates, there were constructive details related to the placement of steel and minor repairs in the compression layer that possibly allow moisture filtration and possibly influence the expected electrochemical process. However, we were able to observe that in the mixture of the variables, but not on the tendencies. The tendencies were the same and they behave always in the zone of passivation. With this in mind, I would like to say you thanks for your attention. It is important for us to have into account that the knowledge generated must land with the poor people, with the unprotected people, with those who have not the same possibilities like us. To reach this, we need to have contact with them, to teach them empirically. And now we know that we have methods to do that. The participative research method is an excellent tool to reach it, because we can do that. The people, poor people without knowledge, could have empirically the knowledge and know how to apply on site, on their communities, this knowledge. Thank you very much. I apologize for my bad English, but I hope to have a presentation that you could understand and you can have or spread into your communities. Thank you very much.
Up above the world so high and down on the grounds, the advancements that you see in India's aviation is the success saga of the excellence shown by Airports Authority of India. AAI is constructing, operating and maintaining world-class airport. Along with that, AAI has a side that's down to earth and close to the people. One that's clearly visible in its CSR programs and activities. Through its CSR activities, AAI has keenly focused on skill development. To generate livelihood opportunities in backward and remote areas, AAI has tied up with Construction Industry Development Council for skill development of unemployed youth and people belonging to economically weaker sections.
In construction industry, there is a huge shortage of skilled manpower. At the same time, there is a unemployed youth. So if we provide them a skill, it will be a win-win situation for both.
Through this skill development training, the student gets theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge in construction-related subjects like land survey, electrical wireman, general work supervisor, site accountant and storekeeper, etc.
Actually, here we are providing trainings to the unskilled youth of India who are unemployed. We distribute pamphlets at the different locations of UP, Bihar, West Bengal to get the unskilled manpower. Then we can make them skilled. So we are providing them 3 months training.
More than 5,000 students have been trained with this skill development training program since 2015.
जब मैं यहाँ पे आया था तो इस सब्जेक्ट से रिलेटेड मेरे पास कुछ ज़्यादा नॉलेज नहीं थी, लेकिन यहाँ आने के बाद इस फील्ड में मुझे काफ़ी नॉलेज मिली है।
हमारे 2 महीने हो गए ट्रेनिंग के और 1 महीना बाकी रहा, हमने काफ़ी कुछ सीख लिया 2 महीने के अंदर।
यहाँ से मतलब सीख के जाएंगे तो हम दुकान खोल सकते हैं अपने घर पे जाके, मतलब हम अपना कोई भी बिजनेस फैला सकते हैं।
ये बहुत अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रहा है एयरपोर्ट और CIDC, जिससे कि बच्चे अपना आगे का फ्यूचर बना सकें।
With this skill development training, AAI has generated employment for many of underprivileged and uneducated youth. And on the other side, AAI and other PSUs got a skilled worker for their construction sites.
ट्रेनिंग से हमको मतलब बहुत लाभ हुआ है। मैं आज यहाँ पे जॉब पे हूँ और मेरा काम यहाँ पे जो है प्लांट को चलाने का है। मतलब जो बाहर से ऑर्डर आता है कंक्रीट का, मैं डिस्पैच स्लिप से उसे यहाँ से बना के मतलब माल को बनवा के और वहाँ पे साइट पे भेजना होता है हमको।
पहले मुझे कंप्यूटर की बिल्कुल भी नॉलेज नहीं थी, फिर धीरे धीरे मैं 3 महीने में इतना सीख गई कि वो लोग मेरा कॉन्फिडेंस देख के मुझे यहाँ पे एम्प्लॉय रख लिए।
Our motto by doing all CSR activity in Airports Authority of
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to be invited for this online international conference and exhibition, India Construction Week 2020. So my presentation will be on post-COVID-19 concrete technology, new normal and the best practice in Singapore. My name is Mr. Lu Jingping. I'm president of American Concrete Institute, Singapore chapter. I'm also managing director of Materials Technologies Private Limited. So we are actually is a testing laboratories for construction. Let me start from COVID-19 situation in Singapore. The first cases of COVID-19 in Singapore was on 23rd January. So this was a 66 years old Chinese national who came to visit Singapore. So you can see from the graph, actually from March to April until May, early May, the cases of COVID-19 infected people advanced very rapidly. So government announced for circuit break on 7 April until 1st June. This is a circuit break period. So you can so far until now, total we have until 23rd November 2020, we have about 58,148 cases and 28 people is died because of COVID-19. So even until now, you can see here only on 20 August 2020, so all migrant workers' dorms declared clear of COVID-19. Only on April, even after the circuit break lift down on 1st January, means almost 2 months later, then all migration worker dorms are cleared and that allow them to return to work. So now let's move to COVID-19 impact on Singapore. What is the impact? You can see Singapore's GDP for the first half of year minus 6.7%. Construction industry shrank by 54.7% year to year in quarter 2 2020. You can see we shrunk more than half. So construction demand also expected to drop from 28 to 33 billion, become now 18 to 23 billion this year. So number of unemployed local residents is almost about 110,000. So construction projects also disruption. We have more than 4,000 sites stopped during the circuit period. Until now, some of the projects still haven't started. So COVID-19 outbreak at the dormitory affect about more than 300,000 foreign workers. They are locked down in the dormitory for more than 4 months. So global supply chain also disruption, cash flow also problem. So we have to comply all these additional COVID compliance costs. The cost also increase. So you can see eventually the cost of construction will rising. But fortunately, Singapore government give the industry strong support. For example, they give a manpower cost support for job support scheme from January 2020 to March 2021. So the company will receive 75% to 35% salary subsidy from government, but only for local employees. So for foreign workers, levy also waived 100% to 25% from June 2020 to December 2020. So foreign workers levy rebate every month $750 to $90 we are giving from June 2020 to December 2020. For business cost support, you can defer income tax payment. You also will receive property tax rebate. You can waive rental and defer increase in government fees and charges. So enhanced bank loan scheme, actually you can now have a so-called COVID-19 loan from bank quite easily. So government also pay some compliance cost support. For example, for workers swab test, government will pay the full cost until early next year. Now, let's move to how to apply for list start of construction projects. You can see at the previous slides, most of jobs, more than 4,000 project sites are stopped during the COVID-19. So now, slowly, you can apply for list start of all these project sites. But you have to follow the guideline by bidding and the construction authority. So here's some steps you can apply for list start the work. First step, you have to check that your project meets COVID-19 safe list start criteria. So basically, you have to check first is your workers' accommodation. Where should workers be staying? There are few options, almost 6 options. You have to, every options, you need to check whether the accommodation meets the government requirements. So 2B, transportation. So your workers, how can they come from dormitory to workplace? You need to arrange transportation. Mostly for construction site, you have to arrange dedicated transport because also workers are not allowed to take public transport. For the work site, so you need to plan safe management measures for the site. Means you need to appoint at least one safety management officer. You may need some safety distancing officer. So depending on the size of workers. So for the construction site, you also have to clearly demarcated work zones. So every zone, the worker cannot mingling. You cannot go from this zone to other zones. So different movement control plan for different type of works. So you cannot mix them together. So you have to clear sanitization and the hand washing point for all the workers. You can see all workers have different hammer or clothes, so you can distinguish each other. So for the workers, so they have to download 3 apps. One is Trace Together, second is SG Work Pass, third is Foreign Worker MOM Care. So you have to check the apps whether is in green color. If only in green color, they are allowed to enter the construction site. Okay, so you also have to educate your workers on COVID safe practice. You have to arrange work for the accommodation. Let's say you have any updating, you have to inform MOM. So after that, you go to step 2, apply to BCA for Let's Start Work. So this one actually you can apply from online. So very simple, very easy, right? So owner have to submit application before work can start. So after obtain BCA approval to start work, what should I do? You have to book of swab test for your workers. So this swab test have to be done not only one time, every 2 weeks. You have to send your worker for test. So workers also cannot rest on the same day. They have to stagger rest day. So means not all work can rest on Sunday. They have to, distribute in weekdays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. So step 3, you have to implement safe management measures. So you have to regularly do in-house site audit and inspection. So you have to follow all these checking. Check your works, whether it's green color, whether keeps a safe distance, whether have any contaminant. Okay, these are some examples, good examples on the site. Whether you have to segregate entrance and exits, safe distancing markings, clear zoning plan, and the SMO, SDO details you have to post it. So temperature monitoring and the safe distancing induction every day, and the individual pre-packed meal means all workers cannot go canteen or cannot cook. They have to give pre-packed meals. So, what is a new normal in construction? After start the construction work, so you have to maintain the safe management. So you have to maintain safe work management system, containment, site zone, and demarcation work team purpose. So decongestion, so safe living, safe transport, safe work, and safe rest. So contact tracing and isolation. So you need to make sure safe entry, contact tracing, swapping, registration, isolation, SOP, etc. So next, we have to use to teleworking or telecommunication. Digitalization now is a trend for all industries, not only construction. So you also have to establish business continuity planning, or we call building resilience. So Let's Start Work SOP. So basically, you need to follow BCA's good practice guide. You can see here's some example of the new normal for construction. You see, they are actually published by Minister of Trade and Industry. There are 7 key requirements for safe management at the workplace. So you have to follow and check the 7 key requirements. So at the right hand side is teleworking. Means all the meetings, trainings are conducted virtually or by remote. So you can see this is a project competition organized by ACSM chapter this year. So we are no more have the chance to meet together, at least at this moment. So sometimes we also have difficulties back to office, but it's so hard. So some people are used or happy working at home. they are reluctant to return to the workplace. So this we also have to convince and make sure they are happy, they are safe at the workplace, so that they are can go back to office. Okay. So how about concrete technology? We also have to adopt the new normal, right? As I mentioned before, we are facing the challenges, especially in Singapore, global supply chain disruptions. Because you see, Singapore is a no resources country. We have to import all raw materials like cement, sand, aggregate, steel. So almost everything we are imported. So now we no more. For concrete, so definitely need aggregate, we need sand. But now no more. Very difficult to get. We have shortage of sand. So we have to thinking some other available, locally available materials. For example, we have to thinking recycle concrete aggregate, quarry dust to replace natural sand. So IBA, incineration bottom ash from concrete. So below is a project we are currently, research project we are currently undertaking to study how to use quarry dust to replace natural sand. This you can see different fines content and different replace level. We can see that actually walkability means slum actually is not much affected even if we use even 100% and the fines content as high as 22%. The walkability still can comparable to natural sand. Even for water permeability, for example, this grade 50 concrete, actually granite dust concrete is better than natural sand, right? So this is also carbonation depth. So you can see actually natural sand and the granite dust concrete. Natural sand, granite dust concrete is better than natural sand. This is a part of our research results. I just want to share with all of you. So next one is a digitalization. Artificial intelligence for ready-mix concrete. So this AR checks all movement of raw materials and the products. The arrival of imported raw materials in Singapore, the transportation of these ingredients to silos, and from silos to plant where concrete is made, and the transportation of concrete to work site. All this can be traced. So this can also optimize the use of plants, trucks, manpower, and the raw materials via collecting data and handling orders. So use this system, we can save at least 45% manpower. Again, this is one of our leading ready-mix concrete supplier, Pan United Concrete. They actually already implement UC system and even sign an MOU with a South Korea company to help them to set up this system. So that's innovation of concrete technology. So smart concrete mixing system control concrete consistency even as mixer trucks move from the batching plant to project site. Enable fix to the concrete mix to be made remotely. Reportedly improves the consistency of product quality and thus away with the needs of quality accessors and the product technicians to test each truck's output while on site. So another one for innovation is self-compacting concrete. They can reduce manpower, productivity can increase by 75%, casting time can reduce by 40%. So this is one of the paper, again from Pan United. You can see you use innovation, use high technology, actually you can save manpower and save costs. So the conclusion, the number of COVID-19 cases in the community in Singapore has been decreased from the low single digit to none in the past weeks. But it is not a return to the pre-COVID status quota. It will entail new ways of working and living until the world has the virus under tight control. It is critical to adhere to the safe work management measures, so digital transformation will help us stay ahead in the new normal.
I am Engineer Tyson Wong from the Costa Rican Institute of Cement and Concrete. I am the General Coordinator of the Institute. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to this prestigious international conference. I would like to welcome everyone to this brief talk about accessible, sustainable construction in tropical areas after COVID-19. In this, after this pandemic, we need to reassess how the activities that we do every day are impacting on the planet and the environment. That's why I would like to present to you this standard INTE C170 version 2020 reset the requirements for sustainable buildings in the tropics. As you can see on the right hand side, that's the cover of the standard INTE C170, and this standard, what it tries to do is that it ensures the sustainability and resilience of buildings, including climate change adaptation, maximized in the design stage for construction operation of the buildings. One of the main obstacles here in Costa Rica to have environmentally friendly projects in any type of construction project is the budget. We have limited resources. So this standard, one of the main objectives of this standard is to take advantage of design factors and social elements to improve the quality of life and environmentally sustainable projects without spending a lot of money. I would like to share with you the timeline of the elaboration of this document, of this standard. The first document was developed by the Tropical Architecture, the Institute of Tropical Architecture in Costa Rica. And the president is Bruno Staño. He's the one who was responsible for the first development of the document on this institute, and then it was ceded to the Institute of Technical Standards of Costa Rica in 2012, when the first version was released. After that, it was revised by different entities and professionals that were interested in the benefits that this standard could offer with the criteria that it has. So it has been consulted by people wanting to make projects in Mexico, Argentina, and France, and Africa. Sorry, in France, it has been well accepted by the architectural community, and it has been published in a couple of books. And in this case, the 2020 version was released just January of this year. I was lucky enough to be part of the committee that was in charge of this update. So we could improve it and adapt it to the times for now. Okay, let's get into the methodology of this the standard. The first big filter is the classification of what type of project do you have, if it's a social housing project or not. In this case, if it's a social housing project, you don't need a context assessment, but if it's not, then you do. The instructions are here on the left-hand side of your slide. So here you can see that, well, on the right-hand side, you can see some of the criteria in the context assessment worksheet. In this context assessment worksheet, what we want to do is classify our project in the way that it has a high, minimum, or low impact. This context assessment has 11 criteria to check the parameters and quantify the points that you get in each one of those criteria. The first four of them are the level of economic development, the type of urban area, the relation between terrain and areas of special natural interest, and population density in the zone. As you can see, these ones are the first four. There are, as I told you, 11 of them. When you finish this criteria assessment, then you go to the chart that is below. In this case, then you can classify your project in one of these four colors, depending on the impact that your project has. After this, you can apply the climate factor table, because we need to know if the criteria of passive strategies are going to be successful in the area where you are going to make the construction, your project, right? So we need to know that this passive usage of natural lighting and natural currents of air is going to be available in the specific area. In this case, there are 8 criteria that you need to be aware of, which are the Holdridge classification, the average annual rainfall, the average sunshine hours, the average speed and consistency of the wind, etc. After this, when you have these classifications, then you go to chapter 6, that is going to be next, which is requirements for evaluation. As you can sense, this standard can be certified. In case that you have a construction project or you are in design stage or in operation, you can certify each one of those 3, and you can achieve the certification fulfilling at least the 70% of the criteria in your impact level, and including the unavoidable ones. In the next slide, I'm going to show you a brief scope of what each of them are. The backbone of this standard is chapter 6, which is evaluation of the requirements. I'm gonna very quickly, very broadly going to explain each one of them to you. The first section is spatial quality and well-being. This one mostly is about the relationship between the people and the environment. How are they interacting? What kind of distribution do you have? Does it have natural wind circulation or natural lighting? Does it have areas to minimize climate effect indoor and outdoor? Does it use shadows for cooling the spaces for comfortable temperatures without air conditioning in some cases, right? The second section is the environment and transportation. Mostly this one is about the surroundings of your project and how does the users go in and out of your project. In this case, the first thing that you need to know is if the site of the project is adequate, if it's according to city planning, and in order to avoid areas that flood or that are exposed to any other disasters. In the third section, we have social and economical aspects. In general, this one, the objective that it has is to access for everyone to fair financial mechanisms for contracts. It can be for buying food, for local purchasing or materials, respect of social securities, respect of minimum wages. In this section also, you need to calculate the investment that you have put in the environmental aspects of your project, and also you need to calculate how much money have you gained from the environmental benefits from these aspects. In this case also is included the sociological studies. How is your project and its functioning and its activities going to impact the society, the local society in the site? The fourth section is soil and landscape. So in this case, soil and landscape, it mentions the minimum soil substitution to avoid transportations and also to encourage forest rehabilitation, use of native species for vegetation and such. In the fifth section of materials resources, the sixth one, there is efficient water management and energy optimization, the seventh. In these cases, what is encouraged is local purchasing, the promotion of modular building and easy disassembling, the construction methods that minimize waste. Also, different kind of strategies that reduce the percentage of resource use, and such as rainfall capture for irrigation or other uses, the use of biogas, artificial illumination designed around the natural lighting, minimize equipment of usage, electrical usage. It is oriented to that kind of aspects. In this section, you can see on the right hand side the actual standard. So you just have an idea. It's in Spanish, I'm sorry. We haven't had the time to translate it yet. And on the left hand side of your slide, you can see it translated to English, a small part of it. So you can just have an idea how does it look. In this case, in the Annex 1, there is a carbon footprint inventory mentioned, which was developed by the institute where I am the general coordinator. So it's an easy tool just to have an inventory of the carbon footprint that you have in your project. The takeaways that I want you to have from this brief talk is that we cannot return to normal. We have to reassess the interactions that we have with the environment. Costa Rica and India are quite susceptible to climate change and are in need of resilient and sustainable structures with smaller budgets. Since by 2050 the UN has issued some statistics where the majority of the human population will live in tropical areas, where a third of them will be children, we require to offer affordable housing and cities where it can have the three main aspects of sustainability: economically, socially, and environmentally friendly. As I told you before, the certification, you don't require the certification. You can buy the standard and just use it in guidelines as a guideline for your project, and you can easily take advantage of all these criteria and ideas that you can have and perform in your project to make it more sustainable. I hope you can take something valuable from this small talk, and thank you very much for your time. You have there my contact information, the acquisition link for the standard, and the older version in English. Thank you very much for your time.
Up above the world so high and down on the grounds, the advancements that you see in India's aviation is the success saga of the excellence shown by Airports Authority of India. AAI is constructing, operating and maintaining world-class airport. Along with that, AAI has a side that's down to earth and close to the people. One that's clearly visible in its CSR programs and activities. Through its CSR activities, AAI has keenly focused on skill development. To generate livelihood opportunities in backward and remote areas, AAI has tied up with Construction Industry Development Council for skill development of unemployed youth and people belonging to economically weaker sections.
in construction industry there is a huge shortage of skilled manpower. At the same time, there is a
Gentlemen, first I would like to thank the organization for the kind invitation to present this paper in this important event. I also want to thank the co-author of this paper, a lot of people from different countries, Ibero-American countries. This paper is part of the Duracon project in the area of the durability of reinforced concrete structures, which belongs to the CITED. CITED is a science and technology for development program in Ibero-America. As I think some of you are not familiar with the CITED program, I want to point out its main objective: to unify criteria, knowledge, experiences among Ibero-American specialists. The objective of this paper is to present the results obtained after almost 20 years evaluation, as well as the reorganization made during the pandemic regime to contribute to decision-making for durability of reinforced concrete structure after post-pandemic regime. For this, there were implemented natural test stations in at least 2 sites with different atmospheres, marine environment and urban environment, in each of the participating countries. This figure also shows some of the test stations installed: 2 in marine environment, La Voz in Venezuela and Vigo in Spain, but also we have a station installed near the Poas volcano in Costa Rica. In the last inspection we made, we found that the concrete was also affected for the pollutant coming from the volcano. Then the concrete is degraded. We need to analyze this specific behavior. 2 different mixtures were prepared, where cement ratio of 0.65 and 0.45. 6 concrete prints of each concrete mixture were placed in each exposed site. 3 were plain concrete, no reinforced concrete prints. And the remaining 3 were reinforced with 6 rebar. The rebar were casted in the prismas to obtain concrete cover of 15, 20, and 30 millimeters. The specimens were oriented with one of its face toward the prevailing winds. The non-reinforced prints were carrying out physical chemical tests on the concrete, carbonation front, chloride profiles, and resistivity, electrical resistivity under water saturated conditions. The reinforced prints were used for electrochemical tests, such as hull self-potentials and corrosion rate. This research has been running in 9 Ibero-American countries: Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico, Spain, Portugal, Uruguay, and Venezuela. The following figure shows all the test stations selected in the 9 participating countries. 37 monitoring stations were installed, 24 in urban environment and 13 in marine environment. Evaluation of the climatic and environmental parameters in each of the exposure sites during the test period was based on the methodology established by ISO standard 9223 for classifying atmospheric aggressiveness. This standard classifies the atmosphere according to time of wetness and the deposition rate of atmospheric pollutants, sulfur compound, P, and salinity, S. The figure attempts to show the expected relative aggressiveness at the different test sites analyzed. However, considering that unlike carbon dioxide and chloride ions, the sulfur dioxide contained in the atmosphere does not significantly affect reinforcement corrosion. CO2 instead of SO2 content is plotted at the y-axis in this figure, where you can see the result from all the test sites analyzed in this paper for the first year of evaluation. Notice the wide range of environments, from moderate to very high corrosivity, not only for marine environment, where the chloride ion content in the atmosphere is one of the most important factors to consider, but also in urban and rural environment, where CO2 content is one of the important factors causing carbonation of concrete, and therefore corrosion of the steel reinforcement. It is important to highlight that up to date, no regulation has been defined to characterize the exposure environment for reinforced concrete structures. So the ISO norms for metallic materials were used. The table shows the physical characterization of the several types of concrete used in each country for water-cement ratio of 0.65. It must be noted that although an attempt was made to use the same Portland cement and aggregate type, the final characteristics of the concrete were different at the end, which may affect concrete quality from both mechanical and durability standpoints. It is important to highlight that, as we had always pointed out, there is no correlation of the compressive strength of concrete and its quality, which is better evaluated by using the water capillary absorption as observed in the figure. You can observe that there is no correlation between the compressive strength and the capillary absorption of the concrete. It is expected that if the capillary absorption increases, it means that the compressor resistance decrease. But you can observe that, for example, here in Colombia, you have increase in the compressor resistance and increase in water absorption. And this is, we expect is okay. But something important that is that if you have the same materials to prepare the concrete, for example, Portugal have two mixtures made with the same material, but different compressor resistance, different quality. You can find a good behavior between the compressor resistance and the water absorption, but not for all the country it happens. Then this same behavior is observed for water-cement ratio 0.45. What demonstrates this data? That the quality of the concrete for a specific environment should not be assessed only on the basis of the compressive strength, but other variables also have to be reviewed. Like, for example, the capillary absorption and effective porosity among the most important ones. The figure, the evaluation of hard cell potential, corrosion potential, and corrosion rate were determined monthly using the reverse reinforced beams. The corrosion rate was measured by the linear polarization resistance technique by using the G-Core6. The electrochemical evaluation was carried out on top of both phases, prevailing wind phase and opposite phase. To facilitate the discussion of the result, stations in marine environments will be evaluated separately from those located in rural and urban environments. Due to the time available, I will just analyze the mixture with water-cement ratio 0.6. In the present work, data from more than 3 years of evaluation will be shown. First, let me show the station where the rivers are active. It is worth noting that in Cabo Raso, corrosion rate at a depth of 50 millimeters initiate only after 11-month exposure period. Those figures show here the potential, the corrosion potential, here is the corrosion rate. And you can observe that in the potential, the time where the corrosion, the potential measure is less negative than 250 millivolts, and the corrosion rate is higher than 0.1 micrometer per square centimeter. It means that river is activated. Then it indicates the time where the river are active. The figure shows an excellent correlation between the corrosion potential and corrosion rate evolution. This provides a clear identification of the moment when river become active. as I said before. La Voz was second in aggressiveness, showing activity after 19 months of exposure. This result matched the prediction done based on the analysis of risk and probability of rebound we did after the first year of exposure. As you can observe, the quality of the concrete prepared in Venezuela was low quality concrete compared to the concrete prepared in Cabo Raso. But look at the chloride content in the atmosphere. In Cabo Raso is 3 times higher than La Voz. Then this is the reason, because in this station the rebound activated at 11 months and in Venezuela at 19 months. The table shows a summary of data taken from Cabo Raso and La Voz. The free chloride concentration threshold for rebar depassivation can be seen, as well as the time for rebar activation. It is important to notice that the chloride concentration threshold for rebar depassivation at a depth of 50 millimeters was lower in La Voz than in Cabo Raso, 0.4 versus 0.89. Also, the chloride diffusion coefficient was 3-fold higher. This might be due to the lower quality concrete used in La Voz, the higher average temperature, 29.3 with respect to 70 degrees C in Cabo Raso, and higher wetting time. La Voz has 0.67 and Cabo Raso 0.46. Those variables increase the diffusion rate of chloride ions. La Paloma, located in Uruguay, is another non-tropical station, is another marine environment test station, where rebar showed corrosion activity. This was installed after Cabo Raso and La Voz. Although this location has a concrete mixture similar to Venezuela, as shown in the table, as well as a higher chloride concentration, almost 3 times. Again, the result for the time required for rebar depassivation on set was similar. The figure shows a comparison among the accumulative corrosion rates in the area in the 3 test locations, La Paloma, La Voz, and Cabo Raso. You can observe a higher slope of the curve after the rebar activates for Venezuela, with respect to La Paloma, and then the lower slope is for Cabo Raso. A behavior similar to that presented by Tutti in this model. This is a confirmation of the higher aggressive observed excuse me. This is a confirmation of the higher aggressiveness observed in tropical environments such as La Voz and Venezuela. Also, the diffusion coefficient of chloride ions determined in La Paloma was lower in Venezuela than in Venezuela and in Cabo Raso, given the contrast in average temperature, 16 degrees C compared to 29 for Venezuela and 17 for Cabo Raso. The table is a resume of the finding in the test station, where the value of the slope are also very important fact to consider for modeling. We found in all the cases the slope in the initiation period less than 0.1, and in the propagation period, of course, higher than 0.1 in all the test stations. This is other parameter that maybe we need to analyze in the modeling. We have a lot of examples in our country showing its very high aggressiveness in Venezuela. Here you can observe, as an example, the rebar of the bridge of Maracaibo Lake corroded in less than 20 years exposure, although a good quality concrete recommended by ACI was used as shown in the table. You observe the water cement ratio, which was very low, 0.39 to 0.44 for the rheostat beams. Next figure shows the behavior Next figure shows the behavior of the other marine environment, where you can observe the difference between the other marine environment and this one that are activated. Noted the slope, which is similar to the behavior of the river in La Bosca, Borrazo, and La Paloma during the initiation period before river activation. It is important to remark that even so, this result verifies the adequacy of the analysis of potentiality and probability to estimate relative aggressiveness of a specific atmosphere. It is necessary to wait for the activation of river in our station under study before determining free chloride concentration thresholds as functions of environmental variables of exposure, as well as the best model to fit the different conditions found in Iberoamerica. Ongoing work during this pandemic regime, which is in advanced stage. Let me present now the result for urban and rural environment. To analyze the result of the depth of carbonation in the concrete, the test stations located in tropical country are to be separated from non-tropical. You can observe that the tropical stations are between the Cancer tropic and Capricorn tropic. The red point are the stations where the stations are located. You can observe that Mexico has 3 test stations outside this tropical region, and Uruguay and Spain and Portugal also are not tropical region. The table presents the average annual value for the meteorochemical factors that are most likely to affect CO2 diffusion into concrete. By analyzing the data, we have found Santiago is the test site being the most propitious for faster carbonation with high CO2 content in the atmosphere. Noted that the city in black letter are the not tropical, and in black letter are the tropical one. In this specific site, the relative humidity also was the best to carbonate, to facilitate the carbonation of the concrete. When we consider these environmental parameters together with the characteristic of the concrete, cement content, and effective porosity, we found that the Santiago test site in Chile has the most potentially aggressive combination of environment. 1.4 milligram per liter of CO2 with 61.2% of relative humidity, and concrete properties, 0.0341 kilogram per square meter per second to a half of water absorption, suggesting it is the fastest carbonation area in the test sites analyzed so far, as it is shown in this table. Nonetheless, once the concrete is carbonated, a relative humidity bigger than 80% should be present for active reinforcement corrosion to happen. So the time of wetness fraction, which is the time of neck plate will remain wet during 1 year, may be used as 13%, which would indicate that even though it is the most easily carbonated concrete, the environment does not have enough moisture to initially induce and maintain the reinforcement corrosion. We found that the most potentially aggressive combination, which may cause higher corrosion rate on carbonated concrete, is expected to occur in Maracaibo, Venezuela. test station. Noted the effect of carbonation on these two particular test sites. As I said before, Maracaibo Station shows the highest temperature and therefore correspond with the greatest depth of carbonation. High temperature may reduce the moisture inside the concrete, favoring the entry of CO2, in contradiction to what's observed in Venezuela, Mérida. Mexico has the highest temperature of Mexican test location. In spite of this fact, it was not the location with the most carbonated concrete in Mexico. This seems to indicate that the average temperature should be higher than 25 degrees C to cause an effect similar to the one is observed in Maracaibo. It has been reported that the electrolyte layer on a metallic surface decreases at relative humidity over 80% when the average temperature is over 25 degrees C. In other words, time of wetness is lower than the one established by ISO 9223. Therefore, even with a high relative humidity, if temperatures are higher than 25 degrees C, the concrete will be dry enough to easily allow the entry of CO2 at Coafan in Venezuela, in Maracaibo, Venezuela. Not all the test sites follow the behavior observed in Venezuela, in Maracaibo test site. The test site of Bolivia, which is the white line, located at 3,654 meters above sea level, has a very high carbonation depth. However, it is located in a semi-arid mountain zone where both the height above sea level and the higher solar radiation should be taken into account. Due to the many factors involved, until now there are no models that can predict performance in locations with such unique exposure combination. Next figure shows the electrochemical evaluation. After 10 years posing the tropical test station, where it is observed that only Maracaibo test station rebar seems to be active at a depth of 15 millimeters, whereas in the non-tropical test station, the rebar is still passivated, including Santiago. This is the non-tropical test station where all the rebar are passivated. Notice that after 50 months exposure, the carbonation depth is above 50 millimeters, where the first bars are located, and the rebar was active just after high precipitation. In Maracaibo, once the rebar was active, it never decreased the corrosion rate again. We have also a publication about this fact that can be reviewed. All the results so far presented in both marine and urban environments demonstrate the effect of the high aggressiveness of tropical climates, particularly in the Venezuela case, in promoting rebar corrosion of concrete. This is an indication of the necessity of durability standards adapted to this particular condition. Due to the pandemic regime, it was impossible to continue with the monitoring evaluation at field level, though modeling the enormous quantity of data obtained was performed during this time. The figure shows the 2T model, where we are working in both phases. Phase 1, during corrosion initiation, the passivation time prediction, especially for urban and rural environment, where because we don't have just have one station that where the rebar is activated. But in the marine environment, we are working now in the phase 1 and also in phase 2 because we have enough information to modeling both of these regions. we processing all the data statistically. We use first a mathematical model, multiple linear regression, trying to find the effect of meteorochemical, but also electrochemical parameters on the corrosion rate. From this, we made a linear multiple regression model. We found taking into consideration the water cement ratio, the exposure phase, the rebar cover thickness, the geographic location, and also without restriction. And we found that the most important parameters were the exposure time, the capillary absorption, the alkaline reserve, the relative humidity, precipitation, and temperature. And those are some of the models that we found. It is important to point out that if you take just in consideration the time, this is the correlation between the carbonation depth and the time, and the correlation factor is coefficient is very low. But if you take into consideration the quality of the concrete, then the correlation coefficient increase, and increase more if we take also in consideration the environment and the quality of the concrete. This is for if you take the tropical and not tropical sites together. But if we separated, the correlation coefficient was much better, okay, as you observe in the table. Besides that, we actually are working here at the University of Texas in San Antonio, the US, where I am now a visiting professor. And we are working with neural network in this area with all the data that we have for urban station, and the results are very good. All of this information is going to publish in corrosion journals very soon. What are the benefits of the Duracon project? The durability of the concrete was correlated with the characteristic of the environment, as you saw. The chloride threshold that caused rebar corrosion were estimated according to the climate involved. And during post-pandemic regime, some models have been generated for prediction of useful life in the study environment. And something very important is that the durability regulation are being generated in the countries involved, which will contribute to design rehabilitation structure post-pandemic regime. There is a wealth of information existing in other regions that we must continue analyzing to develop the models in the propagation zone. I would like to thank the group that work with me in this project and the institution which give all their support, and especially to our dear students and support staff. And this is my group in Venezuela, the Centro de Estudio de Corrosión, that won last year the Distinguished Organization Award from NACE International. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Up above the world so high and down on the grounds, the advancements that you see in India's aviation is the success saga of the excellence shown by Airports Authority of India. AAI is constructing, operating and maintaining world-class airport. Along with that, AAI has a side that's down to earth and close to the people. One that's clearly visible in its CSR programs and activities. Through its CSR activities, AAI has keenly focused on skill development. To generate livelihood opportunities in backward and remote areas, AAI has tied up with Construction Industry Development Council for skill development of unemployed youth and people belonging to economically weaker sections.
In construction industry, there is a huge shortage of skilled manpower. At the same time, there is a unemployed youth. So if we provide them a skill, it will be a win-win situation for both.
Through this skill development training, the student get theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge in construction-related subjects like land survey, electrical wireman, general work supervisor, site accountant and storekeeper, etc.
Actually, here we are providing trainings to the unskilled youth of India who are unemployed. We distribute pamphlets at the different locations of UP, Bihar, West Bengal to get the unskilled manpower. Then we can make them skilled. So we are providing them 3 months training.
More than 5,000 students have been trained with this skill development training program since 2015.
जब मैं यहाँ पे आया था तो इस सब्जेक्ट से रिलेटेड मेरे पास कुछ ज़्यादा नॉलेज नहीं थी, लेकिन यहाँ आने के बाद इस फील्ड में मुझे काफ़ी नॉलेज मिली है।
हमारे 2 महीने हो गए ट्रेनिंग के और 1 महीना बाकी रहा, मतलब काफ़ी कुछ सीख लिया 2 महीने के अंदर।
यहाँ से मतलब सीख के जाएंगे तो हम दुकान खोल सकते हैं अपने घर पे जाके, मतलब हम अपना कोई भी बिजनेस फैला सकते हैं।
ये बहुत अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रहा है एयरपोर्ट और CIDC, जिससे कि बच्चे अपना आगे का फ्यूचर बना
Hello, thanks to the government of India for inviting me to participate in this congress. Definitely the COVID situation has hit all the globe, and Mexico is not the exception. We have had hard times on the industry getting to complete the projects, and all our jobs has been transformed into a new way to perform them. So I am glad to share this experience, finding our feet on challenging construction times, because indeed we need to change our point of view, our ways of work, and I'm going to share one of the experiences on the projects that we have had in these times that fortunately have not stopped, because COVID has been an important issue worldwide, but also the job generation is important, so that the people can continue economically with their lives. So I'm gonna talk about this adjustment that we have had, and also mention that the big projects in Mexico have not completely stopped. That doesn't mean that the life has gone the same as before the COVID, but the big projects have continued with the new rules of the healthy and the safety rules that we have been recommended by the physicians and also the government and the committed industry. And taking into account that the construction jobs are most of them in open areas, it has been able to continue some of these projects, reducing the amount of labor, and also taking advantage of the technologies in order to get to the point of continuing all these project plans. So I'm gonna take a little speech about the new aquarium at the Cortes Sea in Mexico, and also I'm gonna mention the specialty concrete that is being used in this project that is being built at this very point. It's being built in all this 2020 year, and will be opened in the next year. That's at least the plan. So globally, we have had this challenge of the virus. However, it's not the only challenge that we need to face. We are very conscious about the need to produce some movement in the industry, to have some economical input so that all the activities could continue. And the government of Mexico has allowed some of the primary and important activities, and one of them has been the construction one. We cannot say that all of the job sites have been open to continue. However, some of them has the variety of states that we have in Mexico have continued. And one of the examples is the one that I'm going to mention, which is taking part in Mazatlan, which is located in this beautiful NASA picture at this part of the country. This region is Mexico, and here we have the Cortes Sea and we have the Mazatlan state, and all the a big variety of water world is running out of there, and there's a huge project called the Aquarium of Mazatlan. So this project has continued during the 2020, which means during the COVID times. And so this new aquarium, of course, has required more planning, probably than before. If we know how an aquarium is formed, we can take into account tanks and then also important foundations, so that it's covered on durability, because all the ambient is full of chlorides, magnesium, sulfates, and other salts that belong to the sea and also to the lake. And well, we have here a beautiful aerial picture where we can see that there is less labor than what we have in Mexico. I know in some countries it would be still a lot of people there. However, in our country, labor is not as expensive, so it's preferred by the construction for a lot of the jobs, and I'm sure in some parts in India would be very similar. However, it's been reduced because of the situation on the healthy care that we are having globally. And the Cortes Sea Aquarium is rated top of the 10 in the world because of the size and because of the importance of the amount of species that will be shown over there. And the opening, as I mentioned, is planned on 2021. The water capacity is about 5 million liters, and more than 12,000 square meters of built surface is planned. So this is part of the complex, which will have other parks and other public areas for the people, and also the investment is from private in Mexico industry, and will bring also tourists to the area. So one of the technologies used over there is low permeability and non-structural crack self-healing admixture, which is called by ACI 212 type PRAH. So this means that whenever a crack is open, or the porosity of the concrete is over there is present, and there is some source of water or humidity, some moisture, this will be combined into compounds together with the cement, hydrated cement, and then it will form more CSH that will start blocking all those cracks and porosity. So this will reduce the permeability. This is some tests that we had in Mexico related to the self-healing capacity, of course, non-structural cracking. And we have some difference. We don't have much time to do some explanations. However, this is a behavior, or silica fume itself, this is a behavior of the penetrant admix, which belongs to this self-healing technology, together with silica fume. So the capacity for blocking cracks is much higher. Pretty much we measure that as 80 or 90% for these products. And the durable concrete in this project is being used in tanks, foundations, the structural elements, even beams or slabs. And also, we have to take into advantage other important characteristics for the fresh concrete, which has to be with the pores. They are all monolithic, so the pores are being running day and night so that the structures get, to the most part, monolithic with the less repair. And also, it has been important, the pumping. So I've been showing some pictures just to have some idea on how many cars or trucks, and also how many bumps are being running over there, because that's the only way to get to the monolithic desired state. So also the logistic has been important. The consistency and the temperature of the concrete has to be related to the hot weather concreting, because in the area it's a hot weather over there. I mean, it's about 30 to 35 Celsius. So the consideration is to be taken care of. So people have been committed to do all this job. I mean, ever since the production of the concrete to the pours and the placement of the concrete, I mean, the people really, at least in Mexico, is eager to continue doing their job as their best and taking care of their health too. All the preparations need to be run with a lot of careful, probably to be more careful than we used to be before, because we have less availability of labor, and also we need not to have reworks, let's say. So all the preparation for the pours are very, very important, mainly for the tanks and all these low permeability structures. And this durable concrete is being used at least in 28,000 cubic meter. This belongs to the low permeability, grapsol healing, and even some of them have been architectural finished. So this is interesting to know that we can combine all these technologies in order to get these beautiful tanks where the sea animals will be running there, and we'll be able to observe them and admire them. And so just as a final comment, it's difficult to place some conclusion, but I think Mexico and India have some things in similar, and we are countries that are under development. We are in that phase, and the government and private investment joint efforts are a must. This is an example of that. We are happy to show this success story, and definitely we need to adjust to the new working conditions, because that is the key. So with that, I finish my participation, and I thank a lot your attention, and also the government of India for this invitation. And here is my information for any question or comment you might send. Thank you.
Up above the world so high and down on the grounds, the advancements that you see in India's aviation is the success saga of the excellence shown by Airports Authority of India. AAI is constructing, operating and maintaining world-class airport. Along with that, AAI has a side that's down to earth and close to the people. One that's clearly visible in its CSR programs and activities. Through its CSR activities, AAI has keenly focused on skill development. To generate livelihood opportunities in backward and remote areas, AAI has tied up with Construction Industry Development Council for skill development of unemployed youth and people belonging to economically weaker sections.
In construction industry, there is a huge shortage of skilled manpower. At the same time, there is a unemployed youth. So if we provide them a skill, it will be a win-win situation for both.
Through this skill development training, the student get theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge in construction-related subjects like land survey, electrical wireman, general work supervisor, site accountant and storekeeper, etc.
Actually, here we are providing trainings to the unskilled youth of India who are unemployed. We distribute pamphlets at the different locations of UP, Bihar, West Bengal to get the unskilled manpower. Then we can make them skilled. So we are providing them 3 months training.
More than 5,000 students have been trained with this skill development training program since 2015.
जब मैं यहाँ पे आया था तो इस सब्जेक्ट से रिलेटेड मेरे पास कुछ ज़्यादा नॉलेज नहीं थी, लेकिन यहाँ आने के बाद इस फील्ड में मुझे काफ़ी नॉलेज मिली है।
हमारे 2 महीने हो गए ट्रेनिंग के और 1 महीना बाकी रहा, मतलब काफ़ी कुछ सीख लिया 2 महीने के अंदर।
यहाँ से मतलब सीख के जाएंगे तो हम दुकान खोल सकते हैं अपने घर पे जाके, मतलब हम अपना कोई भी बिजनेस फैला सकते हैं।
ये बहुत अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रहा है एयरपोर्ट और CIDC, जिससे कि बच्चे अपना आगे का फ्यूचर बना सकें।
With this skill development training, AAI has generated employment for many of underprivileged and uneducated youth. And on the other side, AAI and other PSUs got a skilled worker for their construction sites.
ट्रेनिंग से हमको मतलब बहुत लाभ हुआ है। मैं आज यहाँ पे जॉब पे हूँ और मेरा काम यहाँ पे जो है प्लांट को चलाने का है। मतलब जो बाहर से ऑर्डर आता है कंक्रीट का, मैं डिस्पैच स्लिप से उसे यहाँ से बना के मतलब माल को बनवा के और वहाँ पे साइट पे भेजना होता है हमको।
पहले मुझे कंप्यूटर की बिल्कुल भी नॉलेज नहीं थी, फिर धीरे धीरे मैं 3 महीने में इतना सीख गई कि वो लोग मेरा कॉन्फिडेंस देख के मुझे यहाँ पे एम्प्लॉय रख लिए।
Our motto by doing all CSR activity in Airports Authority of India is to make the difference and feel the difference.
Airports Authority of India has come to lend a new and distinct prominence to India on global aviation map. And we share this pride with every Indian. And we shall continue to serve them and enrich lives of Indians everywhere.
My name is Ömer Çimen. In this presentation, I'll be talking about what waits construction industry in the post-circular economy era. The presentation will start with brief descriptions of economy and circular economy, and we'll move on with the impacts of construction and construction in the circular economy era, post-circular economy era actually, and some other prospective challenges that we might face in the near future. When looking at the definition of economy, we see that it is a social system that organizes the production, distribution, and consumption of products. Well, this is actually a typical definition of linear economy as well, and in which limited lifetime of a product is the primary focus, and it ignores the after consumption time period. So in linear economy, we basically take raw material from the environment, from the natural environment. We make products and we use them. And once we are done with using the products, we waste the material and components. But as we all witness more of material shortages and environmental problems, along with some changes in technology and even some generational preferences, it is clear that we now moving towards circular economy. So what is the aim of circular economy? In circular economy, resources are used at their maximum value for as long as possible, while combining industrial ecology, recycling, and use of waste material and byproducts. It is considered the best sustainable development model. And by decoupling, circular economy aims to disconnect economic activity from finite material consumption, as opposed to the traditional view, which constitutes that economic activity is heavily dependent on finite material consumption. Circular economy is a restorative and regenerative industrial economic approach, and it is founded on 3 main pillars. First one is removing the waste out of the system and keeping products in use for as long as possible and regenerating natural systems. So as opposed to the linear economy model, we see a circular shape of economy model in which at the first stage we take material, but this time preferably recycled material. We make new products out of those recycled material, and after the end of lifetime, we reuse those reclaimed or recycled material out of the product itself. So it is a circular shape of economy. Well, the famous triple R, we all know that reuse, reduce, and recycle. Now we have even more R principles, totaling 10 R principles of circular economy, starting with recover and ending with refuse, in an order from the least circular to the most circular principles. And in the circular economy, the user or the consumer pays only for the use of the product, and it doesn't necessarily pay, that the user or the consumer doesn't necessarily pay for the material ownership, because manufacturer or the material supplier retains the sole material ownership and eventually responsibility of the material. Let's remember the impacts of construction over environment and economy. Construction has the greatest consequences on society, economy, and the environment, and it is responsible for shortages in natural resources like water and aggregates. And construction increases pollution, material demands, and it is the largest consumer of raw materials and energy, while generating the highest amount of waste, and yet it is still the main contributor to landfill. Moving on with the more impacts of construction, 40% of urban solid wastes are primarily caused by construction-related activities, 23% of CO2 emissions caused by, again, construction. And construction is responsible for half of the greenhouse gas emission in the UK and about 40% of the total waste in China. And globally, 65% of total aggregates and 20% of metal material are consumed in construction. And finally, it is responsible for the consumption of about 60% of raw material. But all those impacts also mean that construction has the greatest potential in generating value and taking advantage of the circular economy. But how? How do we take advantage of circular economy? Well, by working more on replacing materials, existing materials with sustainable materials, sustainable alternatives. And there's some studies already investigating, such as recycled aggregate, bio-based material, and some organic waste to produce construction materials, or substitute them with sustainable alternatives. In circular economy era, we'll see even more reuse practices, more efforts to reuse existing building materials and components, and some other practices under industrial symbiosis. And via urban mining, it is now possible to estimate the citywide reuse potential of building components, and buildings are now being designed for easier deconstruction because we need that for structural element reuse. And under industrial symbiosis, we can now utilize recycled hazardous material for large number of application areas within the construction industry. And steel slags are now being investigated as cementitious material, sewage sludge, and cellulose from sewage sludge. They're also now being investigated to replace traditional concrete components. And concrete and aggregate will be recycled more than ever before in circular economy because of their environmental benefits. And recycled aggregates in the recent studies show that they actually provide similar properties to natural aggregates. Well, recycling, even though it may sometimes need more transportation because of the additional recycling process, it still prevents landfilling, which plays a primary role in circular economy. And construction and demolition waste will not be waste anymore in circular economy because they are now considered as precious resources. And we'll be seeing more efforts to reuse construction and demolition waste and witness some new legislations to prevent landfilling. Because, as I mentioned earlier, construction and demolition waste provide high economic and environmental benefits. But we still have some problems in terms of construction demolition waste management due to the nature of construction industry, which is highly profit-driven and change-resistant nature. Buildings will serve multi-purposes under circular economy, and they'll be more flexible and modular than ever before, and combined with circular design principles. Reuse of buildings, flexible and modular buildings, not only provide environmental and economic benefits, but also some opportunities for sharing economy that may even help homelessness problem and that some of the countries are facing. And flexible and modular buildings that they can also help governments or countries to cope with changing housing demand over time that can be caused by many different reasons, such as population movement and changing in urban settings. And finally, the circular building design does not only concern with environmental and economic benefits, but also overall residential well-being and health benefits for the society. In this final section, I try to summarize some other challenges that we might face in the upcoming circular economy. Incentives and penalties are some of the issues that we might face in the circular economy era because we need them to transform construction industry towards circular economy, and yet we have many diverse stakeholders in construction industry who may have a lack of understanding in sustainability, and it is a big challenge for circular economy. And limitation on material choice. Buildings today are now expected to have more natural material than ever before. New professional skills. Some of the studies are calling for new professional skills under circular economy. One of them called for circular economy manager who can provide knowledge and support for circular economy practices. And because of circular economy gives too much importance on sourcing locally, we may have some limitation on material supply in terms of regional access and supply of material. And we need new market mechanisms for circular economy that can help recovery of the material through recovery markets. And similar to getting a loan from a bank when we need financial funds for our projects, in the near future we may see some sort of loan, material loan from material bank, which enables us to borrow some material for a certain time or period that we can use in our buildings. And new business models, we need business models implementing industrial symbiosis or product life extension or take back model. Those are important aspects of new business models in circular economy. And ownership issues we may face because now the material owner is a different entity, while the user or the seller, they're all different entities, and we may need to have some clarification over ownership issues under circular economy. And new legislation, the economic ownership is still a long-standing issue that needs to be defined in the real estate law. Those are the challenges we may face. And thank you for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.